Welcome to this Ubuntu 22.04 initial server setup on Contabo. So the post I'm going to use is already written. So if you go to bizanosa.com/Ubuntu22, Ubuntu 22, that's going to bring you to this post, and this is the one we're going to use to set up Ubuntu 22.04. This is everything we're going to do to set up our Ubuntu 22.04. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use Contabo as my VPS of choice. You can follow along with any VPS, but I will be using Contabo. So if you want to support me and you want to use Contabo as well, you can go to bizanosa.com/Contabo. And this will take you to Contabo VPS. And you can see Contabo is one of the most affordable VPS providers available. So if you want to try them, feel free to use my link, which is in the description, bizanosa.com/Contabo. And if you're on Windows, we're going to use Git to set up our server. So go to Google and search for Git. And you want to download it from this website. I'm going to click on Downloads and download it for Windows. If you're on a Mac, you can follow along with Terminal. If you're on Linux, you can follow along with Terminal as well. So download this because we're going to use Git Bash to set up Ubuntu 22.04. So in a moment, I'll show you how to deploy your server. But for now, let me come back here onto my panel, onto the Contabo dashboard. And here under VPS control, I want to reset this server so that it can have Ubuntu 22.04. And to reset it, I'm just going to come here under Reinstall, click on Reinstall. It's already at Ubuntu 22.04, so I'm just going to leave it there. But you can check all the available operating systems there. Installation without panel, definitely. And then the password. So I'll use this without any special characters. When you reset your password through the dashboard here, try to avoid special characters, just use numbers and letters. I will paste the password there and I'll paste it again, just show the password. There we go. And you can send it to your email if you're resetting your server. So I'm just doing this for my sake, but for your sake, you probably don't have a server yet. So the password is too weak. Let's make it stronger. Let's see if this is going to make it stronger. Okay, so the installation has started. You can look at the progress. If you come to the operation systems installation, which is somewhere here, OS reinstalls, it's going to show you the progress. It's going to show you the progress. For now, it's showing me pending. So as that happens, let me go to the Contabo VPS offers and we can deploy one server here. So if you don't already have a server, just come to this point and deploy a server. Maybe you want to deploy this one. So I'm just going to select that. And you can choose it for a month. You can choose the billing period that you want. It's for a month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. But I'm just going to stick with 1 month. And that way you can pay on a monthly basis. Now the region, depending on the region where you choose, your pricing might increase. So for instance, if I choose the United States, my pricing is going to increase by $250. Keep an eye out for the monthly pricing there. So European will just give you the normal pricing. And then the storage type, of course, you want to go with NVMe. So there's an option here, NVMe, 100 GB NVMe or 400 GB SSD. If you want faster servers, faster speeds, then you can go with NVMe. And if you want 200 GB NVMe, you can also select that and your pricing is going to increase by $3. So you can either choose this or this. And then the operating system, of course, we want Ubuntu 22.04. Feel free to look at all the other options that are available. We're going to stick with Ubuntu 22.04. And then the username, set up a password here. Make sure it's a strong password. Now choose a strong password here. And you can see they also tell you no special characters. If you add special characters, you're going to find that you'll have a problem of trying to log into your server. So just try not to use special characters. You can get strong passwords. You can create strong passwords without using special characters. And then networking, maybe you want to try Kubernetes on Contabo, your self-managed Kubernetes. You can try the private networking feature. So no private networking for me. Bandwidth, you get that for free. You want an extra IP address, you can come in here and get an additional IP for $4, IPv4. And then any of the other add-ons, you want a backup space, all these other add-ons, choose the one that you want. Or if you don't want any, just leave them as they are and then click next. And once you click next, the next process is for you to log into your account if you already have an account, which probably not, or you'll need to create an account. So once you create an account, you may get an email from Contabo telling you that you need to verify your address. You need to verify your physical address, and you can use a billing item such as power bill, water bill, even a tax return. I think even a bank statement would do, as long as it's got your address on it, address and name. So the name that you used to sign up here, make sure that that name will have the address details that can be verified. Once you do that and your verification is successful, you're going to get an email with your Contabo dashboard details, your login details, and your IP address that will be sent to your email address. So make sure you look at your email as soon as you're done deploying your server, because the next step will happen on your email. So after that, you'll just go and log into your dashboard. If everything is verified, you'll just go and log into your dashboard. And to log into Contabo, you'll just go to my.contabo.com. my.contabo.com, and that's going to bring you to your dashboard. And you can come in here under VPS control. That's where your VPSs will be. So you can see my default user is root and my server IP is that. So let's use that to log in. If you have not installed Git, make sure you go to Google, you download Git, and then you install it, and then come down here and look for Git bash. So I need to open Git bash, and this is what we're going to use to set up our server. So if you're on Windows, you don't have to worry. You're going to run all these commands on Git bash. If you're on terminal, you can follow along. If you're on a Mac or Linux, you can follow along on terminal. So first things first, let's log into our server. And let me just copy my IP address, and I will put it here. So we're going to do root at my IP to log in. Right now, the only user we have is root, but we're going to create other users. So I'll do SSH to log into my server, SSH and the user plus the IP. Shift insert to paste in Git bash. All right, so of course I've already logged into this server before. So the non-hosts file is telling me that something has changed about your server and the key has changed. That's because the server is already in this non-hosts file with a different key. And since I reset it, a new key was created. I've got to delete the IP from my non-hosts file, and then we can try to log in again. So I'm just going to open it using Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to do code shift insert. So you can see it's telling me this is a location for the non-hosts file on my computer. Since I'm using Git bash, everything is under my user like it would be on a Linux computer. So I'm going to add my home directory, the link to my home directory using the tilde. So this is the same as that my home directory. Press enter and it will open Visual Studio Code, and we can delete the IP and then save. And now if I try to log in, let me do Control L to clear the screen. All right, type yes to add it to the non-hosts file. And then the next step, we need to add our password. And this is a password that we set. Okay, so we are logged into the server as the root user. Control L to clear the screen, and then I want to update the server. Since I'm already the root user, I don't really need to do sudo, so I'm just going to do apt update and apt upgrade. So this is used to chain two commands. This is going to run, and then this is going to run next. And this simply tells the system not to ask me for confirmation. This is like giving confirmation in advance. So if there are any updates, they're going to get installed. There we go. All the updates are done. So at this point, go to the post I've told you, and I've said you can go to bizanosa.com/ubuntu22, and that's going to bring you to this post. And we're going to start. We've already logged into our Contabo server via SSH. The next step, let's create a user, and then we're going to set up SSH authentication for that, SSH key authentication for that user. So first, let's create a new user, and I don't really want to do a lot of typing, so I'm just going to copy everything from here. Copy and come back here, add user. And the moment you create this user, then add them to the sudo group. We're really not going to use the root user anymore. So new password, set the new password. I'm just going to use the same password. Shift insert to paste the password again. Enter, 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 enter to skip all this. All right, the new user has been created. The next step is to add the user to the sudoers group. Once we add them to the sudoers group, we can use them to manage the server. Copy, paste. Okay, now let me just open a new Git bash window, and then we're going to log in as a new user. So of course, give your user a different name. Mine is called the new user. Give your user a different name. So we won't be using root for anything anymore. So let me just copy that from there. And we'll try to log in on a new Git bash window. Paste. SSH. The new user at the IP, enter. And then the new user password, paste, enter. There we go. Now we're logged in as a new user. Let's try to run a sudo command just to see if it's been added to the sudoers group on Ubuntu. Sudo update. Enter. So sudo update command not found. I mean sudo apt update. All right, so this is a good sign. We can run the sudo commands. Therefore, we can just go ahead, and at this point, I'm just going to disable the root user. Usually you do this later on, but let me just disable it at this point. To disable the root user, it's somewhere here. Disable root user login. I'll open that in a new window. I can open it up with Vim. Now, if you're following along on Debian, because this post can also work on Debian 11, you should install Vim using sudo apt install Vim. On Ubuntu, Vim is already installed, and you can confirm that by doing just vi enter. Vi enter, and you'll see Vim vi improved. That means that Vim is installed. If it is not, just install it. Sudo apt install Vim. So I'll do Shift ZQ, and that's going to exit out of Vim. And we need to edit the SSHD file. Usually it's found in etc SSHD. So I'm just going to copy it from there. So I'm just going to copy this, copy, and let's search for this. So to search on Vim, just make sure you're in command mode by pressing escape and then /, and then you can paste, and then you can paste in there. Shift insert to paste on git bash, and you can see permit root login is set to yes. So I'm going to press enter, and I'll press I to go into edit mode. And to insert mode, you can see it's labeled down here. On Vim, it will be labeled. If you're using VI, it will not be labeled. So permit root login, we want to change this to no. Right now, we're just disabling the root user from logging in. And then once we set up SSH keys, we're going to disable password authentication. For now, don't do this. So I'm going to do Shift ZZ to save. First of all, go into command mode by pressing escape, and then do Shift ZZ to save and exit. I have a quick Vim tutorial. You can find that. Just go to Vim. If you just search for Vim tutorial Bizanosa, you're going to see I do have a video and a post. There we go. This is my video. You can watch it on YouTube. You can also watch it here. And you can find all this here. So this and the video go together. It's a quick tutorial that will show you how to use Vim. If you don't want to use Vim, you don't have to. You can always use Nano. So let's go back. We're going to start from SSH key, login. But first, let us restart SSH. After editing the SSH configuration file, let us restart SSH, and you're going to do that by sudo service SSH restart. Let's just come in here, and we're going to exit and try to log in as root. You'll see that the root user cannot log in. So I'll just do exit to log out. Control L to clear the screen. And then SSH root. And the password. And you can see permission denied. The root user is not allowed to log in, basically. I'll just do Control C. Now, it's very important for you to follow along carefully. Just be patient and you'll finish everything successfully. If you skip any bits, you may end up having errors, and that is not good for your server and for you as well. So the next step is for us to set up SSH Key Authentication. SSH authentication using the public key and the private key. And you're going to see how to do that. So this is going to be done on the local computer. We'll have to generate our SSH keys on the local computer. Generate the keys. So if you're on Windows, the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to create a folder for your key pair. Create a folder for your key pair. If you're on a Mac, creating a folder is really not that difficult. You can just use make-dir with the location so it could be something like make-dir, and it will be put inside of .ssh. You don't have to use sudo for this. SSH and then the folder where you want to put SSH inside of the SSH folder. And the reason I usually do it this way is because I may have multiple keys that I want to manage, and this is a good way for me to separate the different keys, and I'll just give the different key identity when I need to log into the server. So if you are on a Mac or on Linux, do that. Make-dir, create the directory, give the directory whichever name you want there. On Windows, you can do this manually. Just create a folder called SSH key folder, or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling mine that. First of all, create the directory, and the directory will be located in here. If you come here under your user directory, your Windows home directory, .ssh, inside of .ssh, create a folder, and I will call mine SSH key folder, And inside of this folder, we're going to have the keys for our server. So in the next time, if you have a different server, you want to set up SSH for, you can just come in here and give it another name, and you can have the keys for that server in that folder. So that's why it's good to do it this way. If you follow other tutorials where they don't even add the folders, you're going to have a problem. If you set up a new server, you'll overwrite your keys and you'll not be able to log into that server unless you have VNC access to your server. Let's come back, and we need to generate our key. So let me just copy this, and I'm going to explain it once I put it here. Make sure you're doing this on the local computer because you're generating your keys on the local computer. So you're generating them and storing them on the local computer. So SSH keygen, you don't need to use sudo for this, you're on your local computer. So SSH keygen, this will generate the keys. This is a command that generates the keys, and then we need a type for the key. The type of the key we're going to generate is RSA key, and we're going to generate an RSA key of 4096 bits. 4096 I think is the highest, so that's why we're generating this, because it's more secure than anything lower. If you do 2048, it's lower, it's not as secure as this, so always go with 4096. And then -f, this is a file name. Now the file name, we've already set up a folder inside of our SSH file, and our keys will be called this. Our keys will be called that. Valtra Ubuntu setup, that. This is what our keys will be called. You can call it whatever you want, okay? You can even call it my Ubuntu key, the Ubuntu key, whatever you want to call it, you can call it that. And once we generate the keys, we're going to go into that folder, and you'll see that we have our public and private keys inside of this folder. I'll press enter to generate our keys. So you can add a passphrase, and it's advisable to add a passphrase, but for the sake of this tutorial, I will not add one. But for you, make sure you add one because it's more secure for your key. If somebody gets access to your computer, they take your key, they will be able to log into your server. If you have a passphrase, that will be a second step for them to find out, and it will help with security. So make sure you add a passphrase. For me, I'm just going to press enter and escape that. So the key has been generated, and you can see it is stored there. Now the public key always has a .pub, and the private key doesn't have an extension. So if you go into the folder that we set up, inside of this SSH key folder, you'll see that our keys are there. So this has a .pub extension, and let's go into views. I think I want to view my extensions. I'll just uncheck this, hide file extensions, and I want to show the file extension there, and you'll see it has a .pub. Now .pub, this is the public key, this is a private key. So the next step, we're going to need to add this onto our server. So let's just come back here. So we've generated the key. The next step is we need to upload it to our server. So we're going to use SSH-copy-id. So if you're on a Mac and none of this is working, SSH-copy-id is not working, you need to download and install Homebrew. Download and install Homebrew and use it. Okay, Homebrew installation. This is if you're on a Mac. If you're on Windows, nothing to worry about. If you're on Linux, also nothing to worry about. Okay, so we're going to do SSH-copy-id, the path to the public key, the identity of the key that you want to copy, and then for which user we want to add the SSH key. So I'm just going to do SSH up to -i, and I will come back here. I will paste it there. This is still being done on your local computer. Now, if we come back here, I know I used the same name, so I'm just going to copy that. Copy. That is the identity of the key that we want to upload. I'm going to paste that there. And of course, we want to upload .pub. Make sure you're uploading .pub, which is the public key. And we are uploading it for this user. Paste. So there you go, SSH-copy-id. And this is the key we want to upload. And we want to upload it for this new user. If you're uploading it for a different user, change the username there. Your IP address and everything should match your own server details. So I'm going to copy that. while I'm still logged out of my server. You do this outside of your server. So Control L, and I want to do that. Enter, and I need to log into that. It will ask me for the password, so let me just copy it in advance. Password for the new user, paste, enter. Number of keys added, 1. So the key has been added successfully. That's good. Now the next step is for us to try and log in with the key. Once we log in with the key, we can disable password authentication. So to log in with the key is pretty easy. You'll just do SSH. Okay, before I even go into logging in, let's just go here, and I want to talk about this because you may experience an error. If you do experience an issue whereby Ssh-copy-id is not working, that's not the end of it. You can still upload the keys manually. Log into your server and check if this directory exists on your server. If it doesn't exist, you will create the directory. And then inside of that directory, you will create the authorized keys file. And you can do that in this one line. This is going to create the directory, and then it's going to create that file. And then inside of this file, you can see I'm using Nano, because with the Nano, it's much easier to paste. So when you open this with Nano, you'll just paste it in there in one line. Okay, if you're on Git Bash, Shift Insert will paste. If you're using Terminal, I think it's Control Shift V, that's going to paste on Terminal. And which key are you copying in there? Come back here. This one, you can open it with Visual Studio Code, and you can copy it. So if you just do Control A, copy, and then on your server, so when you're logged into your server, this is done on the server, you'll copy in the key, you'll paste in the key that you've just copied, and then you'll change the permissions for that directory, and you'll also change the permission for that file. And once you do that, make sure you change the ownership of everything inside of .ssh. And you can do that by changing everything. You'll change permissions for the new user so that the new user will own everything inside of this directory. That's what this does. It gives the group and the user the permissions to own everything inside of this directory. So just in case you experience issues where you can't do Ssh-copy-id, you can do it manually, and this is how to do it manually. Let's see how to log in. To log in, initially you were logging in using that. Now we'll need to add the identity of the key that we want to use for logging in. And here we'll be logging in with our private key. So I'm just going to copy. Let's just come here and recreate that. So we're going to do SSH. And we want to log in for this user because this is the user that we set up. This is the user that we have set up the SSH Key Authentication for. So SSH that, and then the identity of the key, I can just copy it from there, but it will be the private key, so it's not going to have .pub. Copying, and then that's all we need for now. At some point you're going to need the port because you're going to change the SSH port at some point. We're going to change the SSH port at some point, but for now let us just worry about logging in. I will copy all of this. So this is the location for your key, for your private key. Control L. And you can see that since I did not set a passphrase for my key, which is a no, that is unacceptable. You need to set a passphrase when you're generating the key for a server in production. For me, I'm just doing this because I don't really want to deal with setting up the password. You can see I'm logged into the server. I'll just do Control L to clear the screen, and I can also close this other window where I'm logged in. Now the next step, once we log into our server, we've already disabled the root user from logging in. Now let's go and disable password authentication. So I'm going to copy password authentication, and let me just start by copying this. Copy. So if you don't want to use Vim, you can always use Nano. Where there's VI, just use Nano. Let's open up this. sudo password for the new user, copy. I want to disable password authentication. This way, the only way to log into the server is by using the keys that we've set up. So let me just press escape to confirm that I'm in command mode, and then I'll do / and then shift insert on git bash. On terminal, it's probably shift control V. So we can see password authentication. I'll press enter, and then I will press N just to confirm if there are any other occurrences of password authentication. So I don't see any other occurrence of password authentication. So I'm just going to press I to edit. And I will enable password authentication. Yes, I need to change this to no. And then I will press escape to get outside of insert mode. And then I'll do shift ZZ to close and save. There we go. The next thing, we need to restart SSH. So I'm just going to do sudo service SSH restart. All right. So just to be sure, we can try to log in again on a different git bash window. Okay, it's not yet saved there. So let me just come and copy. So make sure you paste this and you copy it somewhere, because it will save you a lot of typing. Paste, enter. And there we go. We are logged into our server. So I'm just going to close that. And let's continue with this new git bash window. I'm going to do Control L. And what is next on this? The next thing is firewall setup. So if you do want to install a control panel, most of the times you probably won't have to deal with the firewall, but just make sure that you have UFW installed. And I know on Ubuntu 22, it's probably already there. If I check for the status of UFW, it should tell me that either it's enabled or disabled, but I know it is installed in Ubuntu already. Status inactive, so we can enable UFW. Firewall is active and enabled. Since our SSH, what is the next thing that we need to do here? After this, we need to set up. We need to change the SSH port, right? Okay, so I'm going to allow everything that I need to allow here. I'm not going to log out yet. So what I'm going to do, let me just first of all allow this, because I'm going to use this as my new port. In the next section, I'm going to be disabling. I'm going to change the SSH port. I'm going to allow this port, and then let's just do the default sudo allow outgoing, allow incoming. I'm just going to copy everything there. There we go. So if you look at UFW status, we have one rule that is allowed. You can allow whatever you want to allow in your traffic. If you're going to install a control panel, you don't really have to set up all the rules. Just ensure that UFW is already installed and enabled, because most control panels will add the rules that they need. If they need a port, they will allow that port. For instance, if you want a tutorial for HestiaCP, maybe to run WordPress, I do have that. You can find that playlist. So I'm just going to leave this here. But if you want to allow anything, you can always allow, you can always deny. If you want to delete something, you can always delete after you look at the status. Let's say, so if you look at sudo ufw status numbered, I'm just going to copy this. Before I do that, let's say maybe I want to allow a certain port. Allow port 705, right? And then I will enter, and then I'll do Control L to clear the screen, paste and go in there. And you can see that when you do UFW status numbered, it's going to give the numbers for the different ports. So maybe you want to delete this rule number 2, you can delete it. Sudo UFW delete rule number 2. Rule deleted. So if you do status again, you'll see that the one is deleted. Maybe you want to delete 3 as well. You can delete 3. Yes, enter. The firewall is basically about allowing and disallowing stuff. So if you have ports that you don't want people to access, you can disallow them. If there are any ports that are preventing you from accessing various services, you can allow them. That's basically what you can use UFW for. Let's move on to changing the SSH port, and we're going back to our SSHD configuration file. And this time around, let's use nano so that you can also see how nano works if you're new to this. So sudo nano, and then we're going to edit this SSH configuration file, and inside of the SSH configuration file, we're going to change the SSH ports. And since we've already allowed this in our firewall, we won't really need to do anything after restarting SSH. So let's just go and paste that in there. Let's look for, this port. You can see it is disabled. When it is commented out like this, this means that the default port is still 22. So if I change it like that, we can change it to 7059. Port 7059, that will be our new SSH port. So on nano, if you want to save, you'll just do Control X, Y, and then enter. Control X, press Y, and then enter. And then let's start SSH. Sudo service SSH restart. All right, our port is 7059. So let's go and edit our login. So this is the one we've been using to log in. So let's add the port. -P. You can add the port. You can specify the login port by -P 7059. Now, note that this is a small p. This is a small p. At some point, you're going to encounter a different one, which you may encounter a different one, which is SCP. SCP is used for copying files. So if you're going to use SCP to copy files, make sure you're using a capital P instead of the small p if you want to specify a port. So I will copy this. Let's try to log in. Let's try to log in on a new Git bash window. And I'm trying to log in because I'm hoping that at some point I'm going to encounter a certain permission denied error, which is very common in Contabo. And when I do, we'll see how to fix it. So you can see we have logged in successfully with a new port. Let me exit. Let me log out by doing exit. And if I log out, I'll do Control L and I try to log in without the port, you're going to experience an error. There you go. SSH connect to host is trying to connect using port 22 and the connection has timed out. And this is also good because if people are trying to access your SSH, your server via SSH, and they try to use port 22, they will not be able to get access. They will just get a timeout error. And that's a good thing for your server security. So we've done one thing to at least improve our server security by changing the port and adding SSH authentication via public and private key. Now the next step, let's see what's next here. We've already changed that. Oh, we're almost done. Wow, this is going fast. Restart SSH. We've done all that. Now the next step is you need to create a swap file, but on Contabo, our memory is really not that small. This is optional. If you have a small server, you can create a swap file, and I'm just going to show you how you can do this so that you can do it if you have a smaller server. On Contabo, if I do free-h, you can see my memory total is 7.8 gigabytes. So for me, I chose the 8 GB RAM. I've used that. So, okay, so let's say you have a smaller RAM, you have a smaller server, and you want to run certain applications that may consume a lot more RAM than you have, and one of those is probably Apache. You may need to add a swap file. So let's see how you can do that. Let's look at the basic rules for how much you should add for your swap file. If you have a server with 2 GB of RAM, you can add 4 GB. Okay, so 2 GB and below, just add 4 GB. And then starting from 4 GB, you can add an equivalent. If you have 4 GB of RAM, you can add 4 GB of swap space. If you have, so just go like that up to about 8 GB. So I'm assuming at 8 GB, maybe you have a lot of things you want to run. So at 8 GB, you should also just do about 8 GB of RAM. So starting from 8 and above, maybe 9 there, you can try to half it. So maybe you have 10 GB of RAM. You can do 5 GB of swap file. You have 16 GB of RAM, you can do 8 GB of swap. So you get the idea. So since we have 8 GB, I don't really need to do the 8 GB, I'm just going to do 4 because I don't really want to run anything on this server. I'm just doing it for an example. But if you're running something in production, you can go with 8 or even 6. So I'm going to allocate. So this is the amount of gigabytes that you're going to allocate to your swap file. For me, I'm going to allocate 4. I will paste in that. And I want to put in 2 GB. I want to switch 2 GB to 4 GB. And I will enter. Enter. All right. So we've created that file. And then the next step, let's make that file. Let's give it permissions for 600 so that only the root user has the permission. Change the permission. So you can give it a different name if you want to, okay? This is the name of the swap file. You can change its name to whatever you want to. You don't have to use the one I'm using here. You can change the name. You can even change the location. Maybe you want to put it under root. You can just put there /root/my Ubuntu swap file. Convert the created file to a swap. So this is what is going to make it a swap file. And then this is going to turn the swap on. So even before we move any further, let's just see if we have any swap on. So you can see at this point, you don't have any swap file. So this is one thing I should have done in the beginning just to confirm whether I have a swap file, because there are certain VPS providers that will create the swap file for you in advance, but you can always add another one. This is going to convert this into a swap file that is recognized by the system, and then swap on is going to turn the swap on. So paste, enter. So there we go. So right now, if you do sudo swap on, we'll see that we have a swap file called my Ubuntu swap file, and it has a size of 4 GB. The next thing is we need to add that file into the etc fstub. So when we add it into the fstub, it means it lets the system know that there is a memory that they need to register when the system restarts. So this is just to make sure that when the system restarts, this is being recognized as a memory location for the system. Let's come back here, and we're just going to copy this, and we're going to make sure that every place where this is if you change the name of your swap file, you change it there as well, but you don't really have to. You can just use the same name I'm using there. I'll do I to edit. Press enter. You can, let's not add it above this. Let's add it at the end of this. Enter. And then I'll do shift insert. And then I'll press escape. And then shift ZZ to save. All right. So as I said, if you don't use Vim, just use Nano. So you know what? Let's just confirm this. If we restart the server, we see if our swap is working. So I'm going to do exit. I didn't even restart. Let me restart the server. I'll just do reboot to restart the server. Before I do that, let me copy the password because I'm going to use sudo. Wait for the server to restart, and then we're going to see if our swap file is available. So just giving it time to restart. Let's just check if it is ready. Is it ready? There we go. Okay, let's do swap on to see if our swap file is active. Paste and enter, and there we go. Our swap file is still there. All right, so we've done the swap file. What is the next step? The next step, change the server host name. Yeah, this is actually very important. If you're setting up this server and you will be sending mail, this is very important. Make sure you do this. So we're going to change the server host name next for Ubuntu. So this will be the server host name. If you want to send mail, make sure that whatever you're using as your you're using as your host name is a fully qualified domain name. A fully qualified domain name is a subdomain or a full domain. And the domain, when you add DNS records to it, it can be accessed. That's what a fully qualified domain name is. So it has to be a registered domain name that can be accessed when you add DNS records to it. So we're going to change the server host name. Let me put this at the top. And our host name, let's say I want to use panelx.bizanosa.com. I will copy and bring it here. Paste. Enter. So the host name is changed. Right now, if I check the host name, it should bring this. But that's not the end of it. You still need to change it inside of the hosts file. Now, inside of this host file, this is actually the one that's more important, because when you're running something like Exim is going to look at what value is inside here, and that's what is going to send out as the sender of your mail. So we'll come here and we're going to edit the hosts file. Paste, enter. All right, I can see Contabo already added some details here. So it added that, well and good. We're going to change our host name there. So this is going to be the host name that we set up, and then this is going to be the alias. And then for our IP as well, we're going to change the host name and the alias. So this is just an alias, and this is what, when you log into your server, you'll see. So let us copy our host name, which was panelx.bizanosa.com. We're going to go into the first one, which is this. So this is like the system host name. So this is important. You can see it's .1.1. So don't change the one for .01, because this is a defined local host for our server. So the server must know the local host is that. But .1.1, we let any other application that wants to use this, that is our local host name. And then our IP as well, when anything tries to access it, it will be shown that the host name is what we set there. And that will not be the end of it. There will be still one more thing that we need to do. And this is true for whichever VPS provider you're using. So I'm going to do Shift Insert to paste. And then on the other end, I will just press Tab. And we're going to add panel X. And of course, we need to delete this. So the next time you reload your server and you log in, you will see that your server is called panel X. So let's come down again and we need to change it for our IP. Shift Insert. Let's do Tab. Press Tab. Delete that. All right. Then we're going to save. Control X. Y. Enter. So at this point, I'm hoping that everything is going to work well, because there's an error I'm hoping to encounter because I want to deal with that error. But if I don't encounter it, well and good, no problem. So let me just reboot the server. And then we're going to log in. And once we log in, you will see that our new host name has changed and it will no longer be that. So I'm hoping the server is already started. If it is not, it's just going to give us an error, and then we're going to try again. There we go. The server started and everything worked well. Control L. Now the next step is, once you change your host name, you can see the host name has changed. Once you change your host name, the next step is for you to go into Contabo dashboard. Go into the Contabo dashboard, and then somewhere here you're going to see reverse DNS. If you want to use your website for hosting, so let me log in. If you want to use your server for hosting actual websites and you want to send mail as well from your server, you'll need to change your reverse DNS on Contabo as well. That way, when you do a reverse check, it will show that your hostname is what you set. To change the hostname in your Contabo dashboard so that it can reflect when people do RDNS checks, you need to come here under reverse DNS, and then you're going to copy. You are going to copy your new host name, and then you're going to edit the new host name to match with your IP. Paste, save. So once you do something like this and you copy your IP address and you check on, let's just do an RDNS check. RDNS check. I didn't want to use this, but let's just use this. Paste, and let's start. And so you can see the lookup result has come back as that. So this is actually good, because if your server is not in any spam, anti-spam directories, then you can send mail. So if it is not blacklisted, you can send mail safely, and it would go into your recipient's mail, provided you've set up your server well. And one of the easiest way to set up a mail server, you can use something like HestiaCP. It has a mail server built in, so you can just install HestiaCP and mail will automatically work out of the box. If you're using Cloudflare, make sure you also add the TXT records for the DKIM and the SPF records. Add them onto your Cloudflare DNS records, and that's going to try and ensure that your mail always go into the recipient's inbox instead of going into the spam folder. So that is done. What is next in our server setup? Set the time zone. This is easy on Ubuntu. If you're following along on Debian, then you need to install tzdata. Just do sudo apt install tzdata. But since we are on Ubuntu, I know this is already installed in Ubuntu 22.04. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to paste that, and we can configure our time zone. And of course, I need my sudo password. Paste, enter, and I will choose Africa. Nairobi city. I'll just press N to go to N. press enter, and my time zone has now changed. And if I do date, it will tell me my time zone is now East African time. You can change it again to see if you made any error. All right, that was easy and fast. Now the next and the last step is setting up automatic updates. Automatic updates will save you a lot of hassle, I'm telling you. If you set this up, you don't really have to go back to your server. You can even stay away from your server for a whole year and everything will just automatically update itself. Now there's a part of this that is not available, and I may do a video about this in future, and that is for adding for third-party applications. Let's say you install something like PHP, and you know PHP is not available in the repository for Ubuntu. By default, you have to get it from some third party. So that's probably where the issue is, but that is also possible. You can add those repositories in your automatic updates, and that will save you a lot of hassle. Everything will automatically update, and you don't have to go to your server all the time to check if there are any updates. Okay, we don't have any updates. Control L. I know on Ubuntu 22.04 this is probably already installed, but I'm just going to do the confirmation. But if you're following on Debian, it's probably not installed. And as I said, you can follow the same post if you have Debian 11. It was not installed. There we go. It is now installed. Control L. Now the next thing is we're going to do that, and this is going to enable the updates. It can enable priority updates, and this is going to set the update in motion. So even at this point, if anything changes on Ubuntu, it will be updated. Paste. Okay, so this is an issue that I'm experiencing here on my site, but basically what's happening is these are two hyphens. So just follow the video, and I'm hoping you're patient enough to follow the video. And when you get here, you just put two hyphens like that. And that's going to fix this issue. So I'm just going to do it again, and I will come back all the way here, delete, and I will put two hyphens. Enter. And that's going to bring you this, asking you to enable unattended upgrades. Automatically download and install stable updates. Yes. There we go. Now that file has been generated. And if you go to this file, you can see what's inside of it. Copy. You can just do cut, shift insert, enter, and you'll see the apt periodic update package lists. It will update one every day. It will check for the update. Unattended upgrade 1. So packages and unattended upgrade every day, they'll check for the updates. I'll do Control L, clear the screen, and then let's go and edit this file, the 50 unattended upgrades. And this is important. It's going to allow us to add more things into the automatic updates. So if you ever need to add anything here, any third-party file, any third-party updates, you'll need to come and add them inside of this file. So the unattended upgrades that are allowed are this. And we also need to enable updates for normal packages. So I'm just going to uncheck that, and that's going to enable this. So any updates for all our applications, anything that we install, that is available in the Ubuntu repository, that can be updated there. This, you don't really need. Proposed, yeah, you can also enable this. You can also enable that. Just leave only this enabled. And then if in future you want to enable a repository that's not here in Ubuntu, a good example is PHP. You can always add it in here. Okay. And I may do a video for that. If you need a video for that, let me know. I'll do a video for that. I can even write a post for that and show you how to do it. But you'd just add it in the same format. Okay. So the distro ID, and then where it's coming from. Okay. Something like this you can add. Maybe it's Chrome. You have Google Chrome installed. You can add it like that in here. Okay. So it's not the same way on Debian. In as much as Debian and Ubuntu are similar, you'll see that if you go to the 50 upgrades for Debian is a little bit different. For Ubuntu, this is how it is. Let's just forget about that for now. We can go down and I can explain some more things here. So unattended upgrade package blacklist. Maybe you don't want to upgrade MariaDB. Let's say you don't want to upgrade MariaDB. I will press I to go into insert mode. If you don't want to upgrade MariaDB, you can always add it here. So quotes, and then you can put MariaDB inside here. MariaDB will not be updated automatically. Maybe whatever these are, you don't want to update any of these packages. And then don't forget to end the statement, okay? Maybe for some reason you don't want to update PHP. No, even PHP is not available on the repository, so let's think of something else. Maybe you don't want to update Python. So you can add Python in there. Maybe you don't want to update packages that start with Python. So you can say py, whatever. You don't want any of those updated. That's just an example of what you can prevent from updating. But of course, I don't need any of this. So I'm just going to comment them out. I'm going to comment this one out as well. And let's continue down the line. Unattended upgrades, dev release, auto. Most of these things, you can always read whatever they're about, and that will help you. Let me do escape. I don't want to edit anything in there. So unattended upgrades, all these items you can read. The only other thing that I need to look at here is, where is it? Mail, send mail. I can see send mail here. Let's just add numbering. So press escape and you can set numbering just like that, set a new. If you want to remove the numbering, you can just do set no new, and that's going to remove the numbering. So here on line 75, you can see we have this. Okay, if you want to receive mail when updates occur, you can do that here. So let me press I to go into edit mode. And unattended upgrade mail, you can add your mail address in there. Mail, and you can add your mail address in there. Make sure that your server has a way to send mail. If it doesn't have a mail server, it doesn't have a way to send mail, this is not going to work. And then automatic reboot. You can reboot without confirmation, but this needs a certain package, and you're going to see how to install it. I think I skipped that bit. So here under reboot, you can make it true after the update has run, or you can enable automatic reboot. You'll need to change this to true. You'll need to change this to true. Right, so that's pretty much it for this file. You can read all this if you want to know more about what is available here. Most of them are commented and they're explained, and if no explanation is clear, you can always go online and search for what you need, what you're trying to learn. Third-party applications, especially PHP, you can add that, and I may do a video for that in future. If you need the video, just let me know, I'll create it. For now, let's say this is all we want to update. I'm going to do escape to get outside of Vim, and then I'm just going to do Shift ZZ to save. The next thing was, there's something I didn't install, and it was update notifier. You need to install this on Ubuntu. I don't know if it's already installed. Paste, enter. So this will allow you to automatically reboot the server. That's pretty much it. At this point, you've done everything we needed to do in this initial server setup. You have done everything that you needed to do. And one thing that I know I added in this post at some point was, if you need to run the service on demand, maybe you're experiencing any problems, you can always do a dry run. Copy. Let's do a dry run for our update. and it's going to tell us if it's unable to do it. So I can do debug, and if there are any issues, it's going to tell you that something is unable to update or whatever, or if you have any updates. So you see, right now it's telling me that this is unable to send mail, probably because I don't have Exim installed. So I will have to install something. That is good. No packages were found that can be updated. That is good. That means that everything is working well, and you can just leave it to run. And if you want to run it right now, you can always run it with the -d flag. So if you do the -d flag, it's going to update everything right now. So if I did have any updates, I can just do -d and it's going to update. But you can see it's telling me that there are no packages that need to be upgraded. That's all I can do to help you do your initial server setup. We deployed the Ubuntu, definitely logged in, created the user, SSH login, disabled root login, firewall setup. I spoke about that. Changed the SSH port, created a swap file, changed the server host name, setup auto. Yeah, everything has been done. The next step is for you. If you want to run WordPress, you want to run Magento, you want to run basically any PHP applications, just go with HestiaCP. Very lightweight, nice control panel, very easy to use. So if you want to install HestiaCP, let me just show you how you can do that. So on this link down here, you can generate a script. And for me, I usually encourage you to use Nginx and PHP FPM. So when you're generating the script, just disable Apache. You can install multi-PHP. Maybe you don't know what you want to run. Maybe you want to run something that uses PHP 5.6 or PHP 7.4. You can run multi-PHP, and this is going to install all the PHP versions. If you don't need any at some point, you can always uninstall them on the HestiaCP dashboard. FTP, you can use Pro FTP or VSFTP. I'll just leave it at VSTP. And then named, this is what you'll use for DNS. DNS, if you want to handle DNS and you want to use your own name servers, you can do that using named. Make sure it is installed. And I do have a video for HestiaCP DNS setup. I do have a video for that. I hope it shows up because I just installed it. So I think I'm the one who posted that on Reddit, but the video, we can find the link there. So if you come to YouTube, this is a video. You can use this to set up HestiaCP using Cloudflare or your personal name servers. That is available there. Named, install that. MySQL. If you need Postgres, you can install it. Exim, that's for sending mail. Dovecot is also for mail. This one also works with Dovecot. Clamav, this is like an antivirus. And then Spam Assassin, of course, IP tables, that will be your firewall. Fail to burn, of course, you need to install fail to burn. And API, if you want to activate the API, you can always reactivate it later on, but just leave it. Do not activate it, leave it unactivated, unless you want to create things on your own. You want to access the API, but just leave that unchecked. And then, of course, just force the installation. You never know, your server may experience some errors, but if you force the installation, it will be forced to be installed. And most importantly, you change your port. If you want to use Cloudflare, then change the port to Cloudflare acceptable ports. So network ports, let's see which ports Cloudflare supports. So HTTP ports, those are the ones. You can change your Cloudflare, your HestiaCP port to any one of these. Okay, this seems like a good one. Just use that 2053, and then change the port there. Host name, you already changed your host name. Add that host name there. The host name that we changed it to was that. Make sure that's the one you put there. And then your email, the email for your admin user, add that there. And then a password, set a password there. Even if you don't set a password, you can always come in here and at the end of this post, yeah, there. If you need to reset your password on your Ubuntu, the password for your admin user or whichever user on HestiaCP, you can do it like that on Ubuntu 2204. That is the password. Write the password there, write the user there. and you can change the password for your user. So if you don't set a password or you forget the password, you can always change the password via SSH. And then this, just leave that unchecked. You want to proceed, come in here, copy that, run that on your SSH, and then run this on your SSH, and then log in. This pretty much should end this tutorial for how to deploy and do an initial Ubuntu 22.04 setup on Contabo. Let me just try and reboot the server and see if there are any issues logging back in. If you have an issue where you're unable to log back in, I did a video about how to log in via VNC. When you log in using VNC, you can always figure out what the problem is. Normally, you can just go into your SSHD configuration file, see if there is anything there that is disallowing you from logging in. And you can also see if the SSH port is allowed. And you can also check if SSH is running. You can just do something like SSH service SSH status, and that will show you if SSH is running. So you can see after setting up the SSH key, login is pretty much a breeze. You won't really have any much problems logging in because we have changed the port. We have also disallowed password authentication. So this is good for your server, and we've also disabled root user from logging in. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you do have any questions or you're stuck, just feel free to ask me in the comments section. I'll see you in another video.